unchain Wall Street. They're going to put you all back in chains.
Vice President Joe Biden's known for being gaffe-prone, and he's earned the title. Here he gives a shout-out to a politician who's paralyzed from the waist down.
Chuck Graham, state senator's here. Chuck, stand up, Chuck. Let him see you. Oh, God love you. What am I talking about? I tell you what, you're making everybody else stand up, though, pal.
This is why the author of the book, Dear Reader, says Joe Biden, while not as bad as the North Korean dictator, is a punchline. That author is Michael Malice. I mean, he's on TV all the time. He's a smart guy and a good speaker. We just pick on his moment.
Well, what evidence do you have that he's either of those things?
I just heard him speak at my stuttering group's convention, and he was very articulate.
Well, articulate's often a code word for someone who's dumb who can express themselves well, isn't it?
He called Obama clean and bright. How did he get away with that?
Well, I mean, the same way the media does, right? They're telling us that Hillary Clinton's the most qualified person to ever run for president. So,
all right, but what you got clean and bright is just racist. You got the first mainstream African American who's articulate and bright and clean.
Well, maybe he was talking.
Trump said that.
Maybe he was talking. Maybe he was talking about the white half.
One other thing Biden is known for doing is getting awkwardly touchy with women he hardly knows. Watch what he does here to Defense Secretary Ashton Carter's wife while the secretary speaks.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I think you know how much it means to me to have you swear.
The touching went on for a while, and then there were intimate whispers.
I've got a lot of thanks to give out here. First and foremost to my perfect wife, Stephanie.
When the secretary touches his wife, then Biden packs. What's this about?
I think he was being presidential. Because if you look back to his predecessor, George W. Bush did that to Angela Merkel in 2006 at a G8 meeting. And according to the Star Report, Bill Clinton rubbed one out in the White House sink. So he's just following suit. Did I make a gaffe? Am I like a vice president? You can call me Mr. Vice President if you want, Mr. Stossel.
I'll pass on that. We have real vice presidents to talk about. Dan Quayle also said some strange things. Watch him struggle incredibly here.
Millions of innocent people lost their lives because of the bigotry and Hitlerism that permeated Germany and other parts of the world. It was an obscene period in our nation's history. No, not our nation's, but in World War II. I mean, we all lived in this century. I didn't live in this century.
I think it takes a special kind of skill to get people to laugh at the Holocaust. So I say this is a Jewish person, and he made us do that. No, what my favorite thing about Dan Quayle is he was the butt of that famous comment in the debate with Lloyd Benson, and Reagan turned around on Bill Clinton. In 1992, Reagan spoke at the convention and said, Bill Clinton says he's Thomas Jefferson. Well, I knew Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson was a friend of mine. Governor, you're no Thomas Jefferson.
You have another favorite gaffe from a vice president.
Sure. When Henry Wallace in 1944 visited the gulags under Stalin, and he said everything's great here.
He was the FDR.
He was FDR's second vice president. He said there's no two other countries that are as alike as the United States and the Soviet Union. Thankfully, they got him off the ticket in 1944 because FDR died 80 days into office. And the chairman of the DNC said, I want my epitaph to say, I kept Henry Wallace from being president of the United States. Henry Wallace, the worst vice president we've ever had.
He was shown the gulags, the labor camps.
Yeah, they performed for him. He went to a concentration camp. They told him it was a nice village because it was populated by exiles forced to work. They put on a show for him, and they even gave him a painting to take home, which he hung proudly with care in his mantle.
He just believed.
Yeah, he ran against Truman for the presidency in 1948 and came behind Thomas Dewey and Strom Thurmond, fourth place.
Vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin became the butt of jokes when she said this.
You can actually see Russia from land here in Alaska.
But you're giggling here. You can actually see Russia. She's not making that up. There's some Russian islands you can see from Alaska. I don't know that that qualifies as foreign policy experience, which is what she was asked about, so it became part of the caricature of Sarah Palin.
And I can see Russia from my house.
Another left-wing smear. She never said her house.
Her biggest gaffe actually came in her book, Going Rogue, because at one time in her book she says her daughter asked her, "Mommy, why don't you ever cry?" And if this were a murder mystery, that's how you'd know that the character's a sociopath. I can't believe she left that in there.
I won't touch that. Vice presidents who are Democrats, I think, get off easier. Most of you probably know that Al Gore once said this.
During my service in the United States Congress, I took the initiative in creating the Internet.
And thank you, Al. I'm enjoying your Internet. Fewer people know that when Gore was given a tour of Thomas Jefferson's home, he didn't recognize some of the more famous founders.
Who are these people? Well, this is George Washington on the extreme right and Benjamin Franklin on the left.
Democrats don't get the Dan Quayle, Sarah Palin treatment.
Right. I mean, historically, if you look at it, ever since FDR had his brain trust, every Republican on earth is supposed to be crazy and or stupid. Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan, Dan Quayle, Palin. There's always going to be someone that they attack. And thankfully, this year we have a presidential candidate that no one can say is dumb, Donald Trump.
Won't touch that either. Thank you, Michael Malice. Coming up, more mocking of vice presidents. When President Eisenhower was asked about Richard Nixon's contributions as vice president, he replied, "If you give me a week, I might think of one."